Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Maine Take. My name is Dana Connors, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the program that we are pleased to host, to bring to you every other week, each month. And each month, each program, we try our very best to bring to you the issues, the initiatives at work in our state. And today's program is exactly that. Today's program features two initiatives that really are very different issues, but they share one very common thing, and that is they are important to our state and certainly to our economy. Let me tell you what those issues are. First of all, it's about childcare, access to quality and affordable childcare. It's also about climate challenge, the fact that Maine does have a program, a plan in place to help deal with that issue. And we're going to discuss that with some very special guests as well. Peter Allen will be on to present, as he usually does, a very uplifting idea for us. And this one happens to be one of my favorite programs, and that's all I'm going to say about it. And certainly we'll conclude with the takeaway, some of the things that we have heard here today that we believe are important. So let's begin with childcare. And I am pleased, very pleased to welcome a leader on this issue, our president of the Senate, Troy Jackson. President, it's great to have you on the show, and we appreciate your presence to be able to talk about something that you really have had a passion for some time. So welcome, and let me begin with this point. In 2012, the Chamber of Commerce in cooperation with Maine Development Foundation put out a report, as we have done on a number of issues. This one had to do with quality early childhood care and education. And the whole premise was investing in our young people equals real economic development. At that time, there was a lot of discussion. We brought it forward, but a long story short, it tended to be seen more as a social program, more in line with parents' responsibilities, but that was then. And today it has become front and center as one of our key issues. Hasn't lost its value for the foundation for our young people, but added to that has been the priority and the recognition that this is so much a part of our workforce issue today that it's front and center when we talk about bringing talent to our state or dealing with the workforce shortage. Mr. President, you took a leading role. It was the Bill 1712, as I recall, that I think you introduced back in 2019. We know what happened between then and now. And that bill has been instrumental in being a leading force in dealing with childcare in our state. Again, let me just say that you've been a passionate leader for this. Tell me, what was it that inspired you, that motivated you to get into this issue with such courage and determination? And we saw that determination play out in this past session.
Well, thanks, Dana. I really appreciate being on here today, especially to talk about this. This did become something that, I was very much wrapped into. And, as many things, I look back on, my past, was at least a guide for why, these things become important. I remember, obviously, my mother having to go back to college, her struggle trying to find somebody for me. And then whenever, me and my partner had two young kids, we weren't as much challenged because we had, grandparents around, but when we did, it was such an emotional toll, which I think is always going to be the issue, to drop your kids off. But you want to know that you're dropping them off at a place that they're safe, that they're feeling, really good about it, and that they're getting educated while they're there. And as time has gone on, unfortunately, more and more families, both parents had to, pick up to make, ends meet. And not only do they need to, obviously our economy needs, those people, needs, everyone having that opportunity to get out and do whatever they can to make the workforce go. And I just kept seeing more and more people struggling with that, having not having any childcare or being concerned about the childcare they had. And the pandemic, I mean, like you said, we had the bill, a little over 2 years ago. People said it was too costly. It wasn't good. I mean, some people didn't really understand it, I don't think, and other people just didn't want to look different into something different. But when we had the pandemic and we weren't able to finish it, we saw that childcare became even bigger aspect. I mean, people that were working, that got their childcare facility shut down. They didn't have any place to go. It was just a mess, and it became even more of a priority. So we retooled the bill, whittled it down, had less sites, and came back with vengeance and started, building as many people as we could to come forward and speak in favor of it. And of course, like I said, the pandemic really certainly helped motivate people because they were living with the real crisis, not having any place to go with their children. And that's why, we really pushed hard this session to get across the line.
Yeah, and I do want to point out, you reminded me of it when you just spoke, is that your bill places an emphasis on two very important points. One is quality, and the other is affordability of childcare, because it's not, I mean, no disrespect when I say this, it's not babysitting. It's really a foundational thing that provides a quality experience, but also affordable, because we also know, for good reason, how expensive it can be today, and that certain people need that help to be able to accommodate their needs. So again, let me, I suspect that you had the opportunity that probably was helpful in some way or another to visit in Waterville the gold standard for early childcare and education, that being EduCare. And I think we're all extremely proud as one of, I think, the only one in New England, or it may be a broader reach than that, but certainly it stands out. And that's kind of been a motivator for what has taken place in a little different form in Skowhegan, and that's now moved into RFPs for 5 places. Was EduCare a factor in your decision to move forward and how you would move forward with this bill?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm also, on the ACAB board in Mercer County. So, they have a number of sites in Mercer County, and they do a great job also. But the struggle for them is the same. But, I had the good fortune of my communication director, Christine Kirby, worked for the Children's Alliance. She knew about the EduCare model, and Representative Rebecca Millette actually had, really pushed me, because, we talk about trying to fix some of these problems, but not really sure how to go forward, reaching out to other legislators and people like that. And they said, well, you should come up to Waterville and check this out. And I did. And I was just, blown away because, like you said, I mean, certainly at times, people need someone to watch their kids, but if you can find a place that they're watching them while you're working, but, teaching them, educating them, providing that really safe, nurturing environment. I mean, you can feel so much better at work and be more productive because, your kids are, getting an education. And so Waterville was, great. I mean, I took so much from that, speaking to Chrissy Davis in Somerset County, up in Skowhegan. So that's, what we were hoping to try and model is get more EduCare sites across the state. And obviously we got funding for some. We need to do more. I mean, for me, this is not the end of the road. It's just the beginning.
Yeah. No, I must also commend you that we live at a time when coalitions aren't something that's the norm, but you very effectively pulled together a strong coalition that spoke out at a time that it was really beneficial to speak out, because as you said earlier, up until the pandemic, and we saw the impact, the direct impact that this issue had on the workforce, people having to stay home when both had previously worked or couldn't afford it, whatever the case was, that you built that included right from the start organization or Ready Nation, the Tara Williams or the Kim Russells, the very strong advocates. Talk about that coalition. Was that something that was difficult to bring together? Because it certainly spoke volumes when it came time to testify in support.
Yeah, actually, no. I mean, it was probably one of the best, things that I saw as far as it coming together like that. I mean, people that believed knew that this was a real problem that we had to address. Like you said, saw it. I mean, the business community knew that, there was working people that were, I wouldn't say stuck at home, but were unfortunately at home, wanted to work, but didn't have a place to go with their children. I see so many people in my area that, both the husband and wife try and cobble together, enough for childcare, enough for health insurance, and then still have enough to make. And it's just, it's a real challenge. And like I said, we've gone to ACAP and looked at their program. I mean, they were supportive, like you said, the chamber. I mean, everyone jumped on board because, I mean, it's a major problem. It was a problem before the pandemic. It certainly came to light even more. I think more people understood it. And you talk about that. I mean, I've never understood this, but like even something like Head Start, there's people that push back on programs like that. And I'm not really sure why that is, but we need more programs of kids having a place to go where they're getting educated, they're safe, it's in a good environment, and the parents can feel assured so they can go to work and be productive and not have those worries.
I suspect if anybody's watching this and were doubtful before, you've just convinced them of the need. So you've been extremely generous in providing me this opportunity to interview you. And I know you're limited on time, but I have one more question before I let you go. And the question is one that I think you've really spoken to, but I'm going to ask it to you again because I think it deserves emphasis. And that is, what does this mean for Maine? What you have started by virtue of this bill and all that it means, and you see a lot of other efforts that surround this now that's coming forward. What does this mean for Maine?
Well, I'm hopeful that it means that our kids get a better start to when they do end up in elementary schools. I'm hopeful that it means more people are released to go to work in the workforce. I mean, throughout my entire time, more often, women stayed at home. That was the case with my mother. That was the case. And these are people that wanted to work, had great things that they could offer to, the state of Maine, but were doing what they thought was their duty. And what they wanted to do or were concerned with it. And like I said, if we can have more opportunities and open that up so that more people can get in the workforce, I mean, that's obviously what we need in the state. But in addition to that, it's the workers in those childcare facilities. I mean, it's about providing education to our kids, but paying those people as professionals, which is another thing. I mean, try and lowball those workers that we depend on to take care of our children and educate them is unfair. And so all this comes together to create, like I said, a better workforce, better opportunities for people in that industry, but, taking the burden off of people that are concerned about, where their kids are for a long part of the day. And that really, for me, is something that I'm really proud of and I want to do more on.
Well, you should be. Well said. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time to being on the show today. And let me also thank you for your leadership. You certainly have made a difference when it comes to this issue, and this issue is a vital one for our state, our people, and our economy. So thank you. Thank you, President Jackson.
Well, thank you, Dana, and certainly thank the Chamber for stepping up on this too. I mean, you guys' support was instrumental in making it happen. So we really appreciate it.
You're more than welcome and good luck. Take care.
Take you too.
Well, let's continue on this issue because of its importance, and let's kind of drill down perhaps into the bill to see what some of the features are of it. And who better to do that than Tara Williams, who is Executive Director of the Maine Association for the Education of Young Children. Tara, it's great having you on the show today. And I want to begin by having you take just a couple of minutes to talk about your organization, its purpose, its mission, and then kind of go into the issue, put childcare into perspective. What are some of the numbers or other parts of this challenging issue that our viewers need to know about to understand both the impact, but also why it's so important?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. So the Maine Association for the Education of Young Children is a nonprofit here in Maine that where we focus on basically supporting all of those who care for and educate young children. So that's teachers and staff who work in childcare programs and elementary schools, as well as parents and families. And so we're really focusing on this birth to third grade or birth to age 8 early childhood time of life. And we do that through policy and advocacy work, as well as professional development and supporting career pathways for early educators, and also really trying to help connect and align systems, since the education and care of young children overlaps between childcare and public schools. And so when we think about childcare in Maine, it definitely has come to light in the pandemic. If it wasn't before on people's minds, we're now all very aware of childcare and its importance. And many folks, including me, were those parents who were working at home remotely and balancing kids and kids remote learning, all of the juggle of COVID that I can smile a bit more about now because they're back in full-time school and care. So it's nice. So some of the numbers that are really important to know. We have about 70% of young children in Maine who have all their parents in the workforce. And so that's a really good indicator of knowing the childcare need. Another important thing to know is that when we look at the affordability, I think about that in two ways. We have a system in which many parents can't afford childcare, or it's a huge stretch, but many of the staff and the folks who work in childcare can't afford to work in it because their wages are so low. So it's not affordable for them to care for their own families to stay working in childcare. And that is kind of the crux of why the childcare doesn't work as kind of a marketplace, because the funding of it is almost completely that of parent fees or parent tuition. These are parents of young children holding up a system, and they really can't afford to pay the true cost of care and what the true cost is if people in this workforce are going to make better money. So that is kind of, I think, some of those numbers that are key.
Yeah, you said it well, and you bring to light as to how pervasive this challenge is with our families. Let's talk a bit about the bill itself. As I understand it, there's two parts to it: Help Me Grow, but there's also the First for Me, which is the early care and education part of it. I'm going to allow you to go either place, but I certainly want you to speak to the First for Me early care and education part, because it really speaks to, well, both do, but this really speaks to institutionalizing the home care, the care itself. And so would you pursue either one, but certainly spend some time on First for Me?
Sure. I'll quickly say that the Help Me Grow part is really just about coordinating and aligning services for families. So it's about families having more like a central access point, a place where they know they can call, talk to somebody, find information that covers a whole host of areas, from childcare to developmental screening to you name it. So really good for families who need information and support for their children. This First for Me component is so important because what we find in childcare is that the most stable childcare system, the most stable childcare programs are the ones that have some kind of stable funding, dedicated funding, in addition to parent fees. And so when we look across the childcare landscape, that includes places like a program that's located on a college campus, or a program that has a business partnership. They might be located in a place of business, or it could be a program that has some other funding stream like Head Start does with federal funding. Most childcare programs don't have that. And this bill is saying that we are going to create childcare partnerships in regions of the state, just like Educare does in Waterville. So they are this hub of support for the surrounding community, and they're able to not only share resources that includes funding for programs in their network, smaller home-based family childcare programs and smaller childcare centers, but also things like mentoring, coaching, professional learning. So it creates both the financial stability and also the resources and support that allow a whole area of the state to have really good, high quality childcare for families.
Yeah, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't.
Oh, I was going to just add, I think one other part that's really exciting about the structure of the bill is that when you look at a hub and spoke type of model like Educare has, let's say, for example, this were to, one of the new ones was to come in Aroostook County where Senate President Jackson was just talking about and lives. We would have there then one particular center or program. It could be in a community, that could be a YMCA, a Head Start, some larger childcare that has a good solid infrastructure. And it would be the same thing in that county. It would be a hub in that county that would not only provide support to all the other childcares around, but also by coming together in this way, they're going to have really good regional coordination. They're going to be talking together, planning together, coordinating services for families together. So it takes this very patchwork system of childcare and it brings these programs together in these coordinated hubs all over the state.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you accomplish so much by that collaboration, coordination, without having to build new structures to put the investment there. And am I correct in saying that the plan going forward is to send out an RFP for 5 additional centers as you described them between now and what is the year, 2025 or something, or 23?
Yes, it's supposed to, basically in the next 2 years, we'll have the RFP and the development, and then a time to kind of evaluate, see where we are as a state. And there then could be the potential for either growing bigger or even going statewide. And an important note about the RFP process is it's allowing communities to designate what their region is, what that means to them in their community. So it could be a city like Bangor or Portland. It could be a whole county like Washington County, who puts in a proposal and says, we're coordinating services across our entire county. And so it's going to allow for some flexibility in how a region is defined.
That's great. It sounds very, very promising. And speaking of promising, as I think about it, you mentioned it, and we talked about it in the previous segment, is that it kind of has gone from a modest awakening back when we started in 2012 to today with this kind of, lack for a better word, explosion. So you've got President Jackson's bill. We've got next year Speaker Fecto's bill. There's money coming from Washington. The governor didn't announce it yesterday, but it's in the Jobs and Recovery Plan, money designated for early childhood care. Yep. And then you've got at the federal level, the tax credit issue, making that more permanent. So all of a sudden, we've got a number of issues that are kind of coalescing around the same need, but definitely needs coordination and to really fulfill the promise that we expect. So pick any of those and speak to them, because I think that it's good news that we're receiving this type of support. And I think it's important to share as much of that as we can with people.
Yeah, it is a very exciting time in early childhood. And I'm particularly excited about the momentum for the health of our state and our economy and our communities, because I think, sometimes we think about childcare and we mostly, can picture in our heads young children, they're playing, they're learning, parents can go to work. It has ripple effects across our state when these things are happening well. And when parents have access, it just creates stronger families, stronger employers, and in turn, a stronger economy for our state. And so to see these proposals at both the state and federal level is really hopeful for all of us. At the state level, I'll say one of the things that's really great about thinking about workforce supports coming and the components that are in Speaker Fecto's bill is that this early childhood workforce is really what many of us like to call the workforce behind the workforce. So if they can come to work and have a good job and stay in that job, then they can support other people to go to work as well. And we've also really come to understand that that is the key to supporting a strong childcare system, that without making sure the folks who work in childcare, if they don't have solid pay, benefits, a career pathway, and they keep leaving and we have all this turnover and workforce shortages, then not only is we're limiting access to childcare because we don't have enough of it, but we also limit the quality of childcare because we keep training new people and they leave. So Speaker Fecto's bill proposes that we have wage supports using public funds, predominantly in his bill coming out of the Child Care Development Block Grant, which is federal money. That in addition to that, we have scholarships. We expand funding in our state for early childhood educators to finish their associate's and bachelor's degrees, as well as funding for apprenticeship programs to create better pathways into this field. With also having support as part of those pathways for CTE programs, and just looking at how we align all those systems so that they work well for kids and families and early educators. So that's a proposal on the table. And then I'll just mention quickly that one of the exciting parts about some of the things being talked about at the federal level is that they align very well with what we're trying to do here in Maine. And so in addition to looking at supporting families with a child tax credit extension, they also have components in that plan that are about continuing robust levels of funding for childcare and including public pre-K. And I think it's important to mention that because birth to 5 years old is a really, that is the system of early childhood and childcare. And so this is basically saying that if your child has their preschool experience in a public school classroom or a family childcare program, a Head Start, a center, we're going to have public funding coming through the system, and it's going to be publicly funded. So basically this universal public pre-K is going to take place in all these places where children already are. And that's so great for families because they'll have choices about where their children go and be able to have that public investment support them.
Tara, you are a great guest. Not only do you talk with such ease about this issue that obviously you believe so strongly in, but it comes through in not only what you say, but how you say it. So thank you so much for being on. I can't imagine what it'd be like to have you and Kim Russell on the same show to talk about this issue. It would be very powerful, but it certainly is wonderful. Yeah,
thank you for having me, Dana. I'd come back anytime. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure was ours. Thank you so much. I know I have staff behind the scene probably hollering at me right now because even though I can't hear them, I'm sure they are, because I have just used a half hour, which is traditionally the length of our show. But this show, for both issues that we're discussing, I think are so pressing to our economy with such opportunity that I hope you will stay with us. The next segment is one that is pre-recorded, and it speaks to climate change challenge. More specifically, it speaks to what Maine is doing about it. I want to turn now to another important issue facing our state. That issue is climate change. And to many, it seems to be a global issue, one of national concern, but doesn't necessarily mean that we're involved in it. Yet here in Maine, we know the difference. Here in Maine, we realize that the impact of climate change affects us very much. But the difference is here in Maine, we're doing something about it. And that is the subject of our next interview. I first of all want to mention the fact that we had a day-long summit this time last week in which we talked about the governor's climate action plan. Maine is doing something, and it's a plan that has been brought together by a number of people throughout the state from very diverse interests. And it's a plan that really does matter to our state. It's one that will make a difference. It'll even open the doors to opportunity. Well, today we have two guests with us, one that you're familiar with because he was on the show just 2 weeks ago. That is Ben Lucas. Ben covers our energy and environmental issues and is the one who put this program together. The other is Lizzy Reinholt. Lizzy is the Vice President of Sustainability and Corporate Affairs, representing Summit Utilities. She is also a panelist on our program of last week and is a sponsor of our program, not to mention that she represents a coalition of natural gas participants in our state. So Lizzy, thank you for being with us. We welcome the opportunity to have you on the show and look forward to our interview. But we want to begin with Ben. Ben, as I said, put this program together. Everything that I heard as a result of that day-long summit, if you will, has received high marks. First of all, it was recognized that we do have a plan that says Maine won't wait, a plan that looks at the meaning of the climate action plan, but also the opportunity that exists within it. So how do you feel it went last week? What was your takeaway?
Yeah, well, thank you, Dana. And, I thought it was really a fantastic day. As you mentioned, we had the Energy Summit, which focused on Governor Mills's climate action plan and the work of the Maine Climate Council. We highlighted 4 of the different working groups. The first panel of the day was the Natural and Working Lands Working Group. The second panel was the Building, Housing, and Infrastructure Working Group. The third panel was the Energy Working Group. And then the fourth panel was the Transportation Working Group. I want to start by first just thanking all the individuals who attended in person and both virtually. It was a great turnout for the event. I want to give one final thanks to all the sponsors who, without their support, the event would not be possible. Our principal sponsor was Bernstein Schur. Our streaming sponsor was the Sheridan Corporation. Our panel sponsors were 3 of Brookfield Renewable, Irving Woodlands, and Hydro-Quebec. We had 2 break sponsors in Central Maine Power and Enbridge. And then our 2 supporting sponsors were Summit Natural Gas and Unitil Natural Gas. I also want to give a special thanks to Hannah Pingree from the governor's office, who joined us for about a 45-minute long presentation and question and answers, which I thought was really fantastic. I also want to thank the 15 panelists who took time out of their very busy schedules to join us. We had a diverse group of individuals from within state government, the business community, different industry associations and groups, all of who are leaders in the state and helping to reach the goals of the climate action plan. I hope that everyone who participated and watched the event now has a better understanding of the work of the Climate Council and what we are doing as a state to fight climate change. As we know, climate change is one of the great challenges of our lifetime. We are lucky to have a state that is really leading the country with the work of the climate action plan, as you mentioned, Dana. And I also hope that one of the other big takeaways that folks had while watching the event was hearing the stories of Maine businesses who are taking a leading role in fighting climate change and are adapting the way they operate and do their business with really some incredibly innovative approaches. Now, if you weren't able to join us for the event, we did have a recording and have posted it to the Chamber's website. You can go to www.mainechamber.org/2021 energy and see the recording of the whole day. And I at this point would like to turn it back over to Dina and Lizzy. We were very fortunate to have Lizzy take time and join us as a panel. And I think she's got some great things to say about how Summit Natural Gas as a business is adapting and being innovative to reach the goals of the governor's climate action plan.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I appreciate that. And I would agree. I think that more than anything else, it stresses two things: that Maine is out front in a very leadership position, and that we are talking about just not the negative aspects of having to work on climate change, but the positive side of the equation as well, the door of opportunity it presents for us, a new economic opportunity it presents to us. So what a great way to welcome our next guest. And Lizzy, to say that we appreciate very much. I know that you and your company and natural gas are hard in the process of trying to help us meet those goals. But first of all, let's begin. You were a participant on the panel. You were on the energy group. What was your takeaway for your time that you were able to spend during this summit day?
That was such a great event. So thank you guys for organizing it. I know in times of COVID, it's not always easy to organize a good event like that and get folks together and get them online. Writing a plan is a really big step, and it's really difficult and hard to really sit down and think, okay, so here we are today, where are we going to be in 2050 to reach these goals? I think my big takeaway after that event was writing the plan is a really big step, but man, it is really just the first step, and there's still a ton of work to do. You can write it, but you also have to then implement policy, write policy, create a regulatory framework, and then ultimately create an environment where you can have the infrastructure built to achieve these goals. And so I'd say we made such a huge leap forward with Governor Mills's plan. It's so thoughtful and well constructed. The next step is, how do we now take that and put it into action? And how do we create an environment where we can drive the type of investment that's going to be needed to really transform our entire energy system, from building out a more robust electric grid to decarbonizing the fuels we're delivering through our pipeline systems. It's just going to be a lot of work, a lot of resources, and a lot of development that needs to happen, and
has to happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and you bring forward a point that I think we all recognize when you're asking for change to occur. And that is that change is tough for a lot of people. And here we have a climate challenge that here in Maine, we don't deny. We embrace it. We see it as a positive thing when you look inside that climate action plan and really get to analyze it. But I also know, and I know in your case, it was a particular example, and that is trying to implement some of these things. Not everybody agrees. And you had an experience along the coast of Maine, mid-coast Maine, in which you put forward a plan that you ultimately withdrew because of, I would say, the lack of understanding or whatever their motives may have been. That predictability, that certainty stands in the way. So we're seeing it today with projects. So.
Yeah, I mean, the only certainty I think in Maine when it comes to energy development is that you're likely going to have at least one community say no to some form of energy at some point, right? I'd like to think that Summit was unique, but unfortunately, I don't know that there's any energy source that the state hasn't said no to at some point, whether it's setting up moratorium on wind projects or even solar projects now, whether it's building out new electric infrastructure, whether it's putting new pipe in the ground to bring a lower carbon fuel right to industrial users and commercial customers. And that's what we faced. We were hoping to build out a $90 million expansion to the mid-coast to bring natural gas access to residential customers. So, once you upgrade your equipment and transition to natural gas, it's, about a 38% emissions reduction. But we also were going to build that pipeline to one of the largest industrial users in the state that's still burning coal and rubber tires. Would have had a huge emissions impact from a climate perspective and created a more robust energy infrastructure to deliver by 2050 low carbon fuels or carbon neutral fuels that will be critical to meeting our emissions reduction goals. So for us, I thought about it, and it's always hard right now to talk about building out infrastructure without folks thinking about what's on our ballot, right, in November, the New England Clean Energy Corridor. And at Summit, we don't necessarily have a dog in that fight. But I do think it's reflective of the fact that whether it was wind at some point, solar, natural gas, or transmission lines, we have a really hard time saying yes as a state. And you can even set up and get through the state permits and the federal permits, but locally in municipalities, it's really hard to get folks to say yes. We all want to combat climate change, but we don't necessarily want that wind project built next door or want that transmission corridor running next to our school. And I think that's just a friction point that we're going to have to learn to deal with in Maine. I said at the symposium, at the summit, I don't think it's a question of whether the technology exists to meet our emissions reduction goals. I think there are tons of levers for us to pull, and Maine is uniquely positioned to lead on so many of them. I think it's a question of whether we can build that infrastructure out, whether we can get the projects done to meet the needs of what, you know, our energy system looks like tomorrow.
Yeah, that is a challenge. And you said it extremely well. But I would also say that Summer Utilities has not given up on the efforts to fulfill their area of responsibility or look at innovation in a way that will serve this issue. And I'm struck by the fact that you received a grant of $5 million from the Department of Energy, one of only 22, to do some very special things. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So for Summit, we've been thinking about climate change since we really came to Maine, and part of coming here, right, was it's a state heavily saturated in oil. We already, just through converting industry, residential, commercial customers, have taken and reduced emissions to the equivalent of about 15,000 cars, just taking them off the road. But in 2019, we really wanted to say, how can we go further? What more can we be doing? And there are incredible innovations happening right now when it comes to developing renewable gases, be it green hydrogen or renewable natural gas, which is derived from the decomposition of organic materials. So animal waste, landfill waste. So in 2019, we launched the first of its kind in Maine, renewable green tariff for our customers. So similar to how customers could pay a little extra and opt to have more of their power be from renewable energy, we allow our customers to opt the same way, and they can buy the attributes of renewable natural gas from a landfill project. It's a really cool way to reduce your emissions and sort of jumpstart the industry. We also started developing a renewable natural gas digester project in Clinton, Maine, where we're partnering with a bunch of dairy farms, and we're going to be collecting their manure and generating about 130,000 MMBTU of gas a year, which is actually carbon negative gas. It'll be like taking over 6,000 cars off the road from an emissions perspective. And the DOE grant is actually to add one additional step in that process. We're actually going to be having what may be, by the time we get it built, the first in the nation on-system power to biomethane facility at this renewable gas digester. So we're going to be capturing the carbon from the digester, and we're going to be mixing it with green hydrogen to create pipeline quality biomethane. The DOE grant helps fund the system that we need to be able to turn the green hydrogen and the captured carbon into methane, but it'll be the first of its kind on system facility in the country. And the great thing about it is it's a demonstration project. So this allows us to deploy this technology, proof of concept, educate folks about it for 15 to 18 months. Our hope has always been to do a much larger power to biomethane project or power to gas project in the state. And we're hoping that through this demonstration project and through additional conversations with policymakers, we can help jumpstart the green hydrogen industry in the state of Maine and really drive development of that technology. Maine is really uniquely poised for this type of technology because of how much renewable energy we develop. We're curtailing a ton of that renewable energy because it's being developed at a time where there isn't a lot of demand and we don't have the proper storage infrastructure. Green hydrogen uses that curtailed energy and converts it to hydrogen for long-term duration storage. And you can either turn it into biomethane, turn into ammonia for industrial purposes, or hopefully eventually put it right in a pipeline and use it to heat a home.
Yeah, that's a very encouraging dissertation, for lack of a better word, on the opportunity that exists here. I think that, you know, we're speaking of a strategic plan that guides our state forward, in this instance on climate change. Mm-hmm. But within the state strategic plan that focuses on workforce and it also focuses on innovation, there probably isn't a better example of innovation than what you have just described. And when you think about the alternatives that exist within the energy industry as a whole, there are tremendous opportunities. You've spoken of one, and I think I understood most of it. That was my problem, not yours. But it's, I just think it's an incredible opportunity for this state, both today as well as the future, and how fortunate we are to have that climate action plan. I think it will serve us well, and your interview today proves that to be true. One last question for you. You operate in more than the state of Maine. You operate, as I recall, probably 5 or 6 states. In your opinion, how is Maine stacking up on this global issue that gets reduced to what we can do as a state at the local level?
Yeah, I mean, Maine would be so proud of itself and how much it's leading on this area. And, you know, it's hard. I said, we've got the plan in place, which is a lot more than what a lot of states have. And I'd say what I'm really proud of with that plan is how technology neutral it is. They really looked at the needs of the state, the type of state we are, the temperatures we have. You know, it's not a state that says there's a silver bullet, let's go all this way. They say, let's lay it all out on the table and leverage every resource we have.
Mm-hmm.
I will say from a policy perspective, I think there are some states to learn from, particularly when it comes to decarbonizing our fuel system. We've done great things on the electric side. We need to build out that same policy and regulatory framework to make sure that we're developing carbon neutral, carbon negative fuels. And we can look to states like Nevada, states like Missouri, states like Oregon, that have really put in place some really interesting policy initiatives. Minnesota just passed an initiative that's going to really jumpstart investment and innovation, including green hydrogen and renewable gas. So from our perspective, those are states we can mimic, and I've helped some policy in those states. But overall, I'd say Maine is unique in a way that it is so focused on this, and you do get bipartisan support on a lot of these initiatives in a way that you don't necessarily see in other places across the country. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. I think that this issue is exciting because of the opportunities it presents for us. And I would close with this, a word of appreciation. You are extremely articulate about this industry and the opportunity, and I am so grateful that you are our host today. I say our host, our guest today, that's right. You should be the host today, but the guest today, because I think you have changed minds and you do share the opportunity that exists in the climate challenge. And for that, we're extremely grateful. Thank you so much. And Ben, I thank you for providing the opportunity to have Lizzy on with us today. It was a great segment, and I hope our viewers will appreciate it as much as I do. So thanks, Lizzy, and thanks, Ben.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. Thanks, Lizzy.
Well, back to the segment at hand. Peter Van Allen, I hope you're still with me. You haven't gone anywhere, is because you have a very exciting topic to share with our viewers today. I described it at the outset as one of my favorite, and it certainly is. So why don't you tell our viewers a bit about why we're both talking about it today?
Thanks, Dana. Really interesting show. I really enjoyed, hearing all these different perspectives today. As always, doing a great job on the Maine Take. Today, I thought I'd bring up the something that's been a popular story for us on our website, and the print edition also just came out. This is, of course, our annual Best Places to Work in Maine. Mainebiz actually only has kind of a small part in this. We're and as you know, the Maine State Chamber is also involved in this. It's a product of the Maine State Council of the Society for Human Resources Management. And every year for the past 16 years, I believe it's been, they name the best places to work in Maine. And it's pretty cool to see that the large company category was actually Decra Pharmaceuticals. They're a British company, but they have a big operation in Portland. This is 250 or more employees. They bought Putney Pharmaceutical Company. They bought that 5 years ago for $200 million. It was a big, very big deal at the time. And they took the top spot in the large company. The mid-sized company is actually a nonprofit, but one that does really significant work here in Maine, and it's Jobs for Maine Graduates Incorporated, which is based in Augusta. So it's pretty neat to see. It's a cool program. I know you guys are very familiar with it, but really neat to see.
Yeah, I mean, this has been, I think you mentioned it, 16 years. How many actual companies were honored? Is it like when you add them all
I
up?
don't have the exact figure. It's around 100. I mean,
That's what I thought. Yeah.
It's amazing, Dana, because I mean, they have to go through an in-depth questionnaire. I mean, companies have to participate in this process, but they go through an in-depth questionnaire. The companies have to have at least 15 employees. They have to be in business for at least a year. There are other criteria. You can be a for-profit company, or you can be a nonprofit. But it's really taking a look. It's going beyond the basic pay issues and benefit issues to look at company culture, what it's like to work there, the fairness, what kind of professional development you'll have, what kind of support you'll have, when your family grows, when you have a child or adopt a child, mental and physical fitness aspects to it. So there's a lot of different criteria that go into this. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the exception of this year, this year was Zoom and not in person, and I have always remarked as to how uplifting that evening is when the actual awards are handed out. You can almost feel the enthusiasm, the energy, just the good vibes that go with knowing that this is a process in which the employee participated. It is a culture, as you said, and the reward is you get to be named one of the best places to work in Maine. I mean, that's a pretty powerful statement. And I just think it is so great that we have that here in Maine and that so many of our businesses do participate.
Right.
That's
one other note too. I mean, and you and I had talked about this a little bit before the show, but it's a great recruiting tool. It's also a great retention tool because everybody is out there trying to find skilled workers, skilled employees. It's a great thing in the recruiting process to be able to say we're one of the best places to work in Maine. It's great. I think you pointed this out when we had an earlier conversation, but it's a great retention tool as well because everybody wants to work for a place that's getting kudos outside of their four walls.
Oh, that's an outstanding point to be made because we are in a workforce competitive market where benefits matter, where culture matters, and sometimes the point that you made is probably overlooked by many of us, but not by the employee. Who it's one thing to be able to market yourself as one of the best places to work in our state. It's another thing when you think about what you just said, the recruitment, the retention. Boy, I'd like to work for a company that is classified through a process that's pretty exhaustive as the best place to work. So no, kudos, great idea to bring to our audience. And I'm sure that it will encourage even more participation another year. So as usual, thanks, Peter.
Thank you so much, Dana. Appreciate it. It's always a pleasure being on the show.
The pleasure is ours, believe me.
Thank you.
Well, it's been longer than normal, but you know what? There's been some incredible information that has been shared, and we hope that you have received something out of it. When you think of it, they are two issues that are so different, but yet they share a common bond. Think about it. Both the climate challenge, the early childhood care and quality education are challenges that this state is facing. But both of them share the fact that there are efforts, there's a plan, those things are in play, under consideration, trying to find the opportunity that exists within the challenge. They're not turning their back on the challenge, they're trying to find the good, the promise, the opportunity. And both are tied to our economic success. I mean, childcare 2012, when we did our Make in Maine report, we talked about it on the show. It was something that was recognized for the value it brought to the foundational part of a child's life. It set them up for the future. You give them that quality care and education, so important. But today, with the workforce challenge, it's taken on a new life. And we're pleased to see that because it is so important to our economic success. The climate change challenge, Maine is distinguishing itself as a leader. Yes, there are those who may see it as a global or a national or even through a negative lens because it is a challenge. But the climate action plan that says Maine won't wait says to all of us, we're going to take this issue and we're going to find the good, the opportunity, and we're going to create a new economy coming out of it, often classified as green economy, but we're going to do it. And as you just heard Peter say, one of the best places to work, it is such an uplifting program, one that plays not only favorable to the company who can, through a poster on their building say, or a banner, we are one of the best places to work in Maine, but think of it in terms of recruitment, retention in the workforce today. And though it's not on our program, I do want to bring to our small business community what was talked about yesterday by our governor. We have the money that was released to the state by the American Rescue Plan. The governor put forward the Jobs and Recovery Plan to the legislature, was approved. That money became available yesterday. An announcement was made in terms of 139 million being dedicated to small business to help with insurance and premiums, to help with recovery grants to those who may have fallen through the cracks, who are seasonal perhaps, or just simply needed more money because they were hurt more than most. And certainly to replenish the trust fund, unemployment trust fund, mitigating any tax increase. As a matter of fact, when you looked at the possibility without that 80 million going towards replenishing that account, we could have been facing 60 million or 60% increase in unemployment taxes. That was a good announcement. It's intended to serve a vital part of our economy. And when you think about today's program, the words that I think of is that the future rewards those who plan and press on. Planning and persistence are vital. When I think about that and reflect on today's program, I've got to tell you, I feel pretty good about our future because we do have a plan, as you've heard today, on those issues, and we certainly are pressing on. That's the takeaway for this week. As in the past, I thank all of you for being with us today, our sponsors, our viewers, and giving us the opportunity to share with you some of the issues that we believe are important. And I leave you with this message, as I do with all of our programs. In a world where you can be anything, be kind. Be kind to yourself and be kind to one another. In 2 weeks' time, we'll see you right back here. Have a great couple of weeks.